Thanks for joining us tonight for a Dreamtime Transmission. Hopefully, these dreams help you drift into sleep easily. I would greatly appreciate it if you liked and subscribed before you drift off. New videos are released every night, so join us tomorrow if you like. Thank you, and good night.
From Your Next Toy F21, I had a dream that I had a small crab, the type you would find on the beach in BC, Canada, and I put it in my mouth to eat it. The crab was still alive, so when I put it in my mouth and started to bite down, it pinched my two front teeth. I pulled, but when I realized that it was squeezing so hard it might rip my teeth out or crush the teeth, I stopped pulling. Then I woke up. I have been very stressed out for a number of reasons. I think I sort of understand the root of the dream, but I would love to hear any and all interpretations. Another dream I had a while back, which I believe has a similar root meaning, was I looked into a mirror and saw my face, then had intense pain in my stomach that made me keel over. When I looked back in the mirror, I was someone else, not someone I knew. And I am not even sure I registered what I looked like, rather than just simply noticing I wasn't me. And then I woke up. When I was a teenager, I would often have a dream where giant spiders would chase me, and I would have nowhere to hide. I never was attacked or injured, but I always woke up terrified. Once, after going on a few dates and then ending things in conflict with a guy, I had a dream that he chased me with a baseball bat. I would hide and run, but he would always find me. Again, he never got close enough to hurt me, but he was always around the corner or just out of reach. I often have short, very vivid, jarring dreams such as this. They leave me feeling incredibly rattled because they felt so real and felt like they came from deep within, like my inner child or trauma is trying to tell me something. Any ideas? Would love to discuss. Ask any and all questions. Help me flush this out.
From Sweaty Salty Balls, I have traveled quite a bit throughout the U.S. throughout my life, mostly by car. For those who have traveled by car, you might know where some of these simulated experiences come from. But these are things that usually happen in my recurring travel dreams in no specific order. There's always mountains, and they're always just as beautiful in my mind as in real life. There's always a large city with many exit ramps. Sometimes taking these exit ramps will take me in the middle of a giant mix-up of ramps, bridges all over a body of water. The bridges have no support beams, so they're just kind of floating there. Also, whenever I end up getting lost in these bundles of floating roads, it ends up getting foggy, making things really confusing. There's almost always a scenario where I get lost or stuck. It's probably one of my biggest fears when traveling. Usually, whenever I stop and can't keep going, something bad happens. Like, for example, in my last dream, this happened, and I got stuck in a city where everyone I walked past on the sidewalk said, "Hey, nice shirt you got, buddy," and then proceeded to try and steal my shirt. The final destination is always really weird. Sometimes it's a haunted mansion, sometimes it's a replica of Groose House, sometimes it's an abandoned mall, and sometimes it's the top of a mountain that is unrealistically skinny. Let me know if anyone has similar dreams about travel. I'm curious if any of these scenarios are common.
From Pretty Little Robot. For the past few years, my nights have been dominated by a recurring theme: escaping and being chased. Almost nightly, I find myself in a chase, captured by unknown people while navigating familiar and unfamiliar places. Last night's dream led me through an unfamiliar hotel and random streets, finally reaching my home, only to find my pursuer hiding in bed beside my sleeping husband. I tried to scream, but nothing came out, so I fought my capturer to escape yet again. My dream's persistent occurrences raise questions. Why am I stuck in this recurring narrative? And what can I do during my waking day to minimize their occurrences? Has anyone else grappled with a similar dream pattern? I'm eager to hear your insights, advice, and shared experiences.
From Little Gay Demon, I, 17E, keep having this dream that my boyfriend, 15 is cheating on me with one of his friends. I feel like shit every time I wake up from it, and I don't know if I should tell him or not. I completely trust him, and I feel like he'd get upset and feel like I don't trust him. What should I do? It hurts a lot.
From a Mosic score, I am someone who has a lot of types of dreams, and I tend to have the bad ones especially. However, these days, no matter what I'm dreaming, my ex is right there. He looks directly at me from afar, and he seems to get a little closer than the previous dream. There's always a message that I'm reading when he's there, which shows regret and nostalgia. I must say that I blocked him from social media and even Messenger. I don't know what to make of all this. I'm starting to get worried that he might appear again in real life, which I don't want at all. Any suggestions?
From Creative Camel 8884. Last night I fell asleep with a nicotine patch on, and it always causes very vivid dreams with insane level of details. This one was so cool I wrote it down as soon as I woke up. Super long, split into 2 parts for Reddit's character limit. I was on an orbiting space colony of roughly 100,000 people. The human population lived in 3 types of spaces. The space colony, vast walled communities, and warlord-ran tribes. The walled communities are where people applied for jobs to live on the space. No prisons. You were just released with food and water to the tribes. They would show the release on TV, people leaving with carts of 5-gallon water jugs and backpacks of food being robbed immediately and beaten for resisting. The comment was made that those third world regions hadn't changed in 500 years. I managed the bars on the station. I was training a new round of waitresses and bar staff for life on the station. How to understand how alcohol impacts newbies to space, as the station was constantly under construction and the scientists would never raise a hammer. Taking them on tours of the place. I was explaining how this 300-year-old station was under constant upgrade, how it was a whole living city rotating around Earth. Breathtaking views. Once again, I felt like I was watching real scenes through a decedent's eyes and not a random dream from my imagination. This felt like observation of a day in the life. I spoke to my orientation group about how I had to clean up puke and laughed about how, despite the location, it was not really that glamorous to have a station job. After I left, I picked up a packet of papers from the office and made small talk with acquaintances as I walked through the halls. I was thinking of having a child. Having kids was strictly regulated, and you picked from candidates as a woman men who would be willing to be paired to raise a kid aboard. It was expensive to save up for. Only the genius, extremely wealthy women could afford to have 2 or 3. It was easier to do a few cycles as a waitress and return to the walled cities to have a family of your choosing, which is why I had so many staff training rotations. Men who were not elite had their names added to a list hoping to be picked. All the construction supervisors were chosen spouses of scientists' women, which is why they were able to stay past a single rotation. I knew this from my regulars. I knew hundreds of people from working my way up in the service sector. I wasn't as important as the managers of the dining halls or themed restaurants. My bars were snacks and booze.
From Wenji. The only thing I remember about the dream was that I was at school wearing a cowboy hat, a white shirt, and no underwear, with my shorts on the desk next to me. I asked the teacher to go get some underwear. And I wake up detail. It was trivial to be naked. From Killin' It G. I dreamt that I didn't know I was pregnant and had a baby girl in my bed. She looked exactly like my little sister, who passed away a long time ago. In the dream, she aged a year a week, and I kept telling everyone I know she isn't going to make it. It was so real.
From I Blessed You. It started when I was running from this guy at the parking lot in the gas station, and then he shot me. And I didn't see much blood at first, but as I started to walk home, the blood started rushing uncontrollably. I started to walk and run home, but I felt tired. I tried going to my neighbor a few blocks over for help, but they didn't help me, and one of them was a police officer. So I kept running, walking home bleeding out, and it's getting worse by the second. I eventually make it home to tell my parents to drive to hospital. Now when I'm bleeding more than ever, I look down, I see a skull being formed by my blood, and I knew I was going to die, and I kept telling myself that. This happened multiple times, a skull being formed from my blood. I tried applying pressure, but it made it worse. So I rushed my parents to take me to the hospital. We get in the car and start driving to the hospital, but by the time we get up the street, I see my neighborhood in a news broadcast about a attempted murder while I was leaving my neighborhood. There were a bunch of police officers lined up going to my house. As I was leaving, and my dad wanted to stop and get the police help, but I didn't. We got back to the gas station and went into the parking lot to save time, and I said this is the exact place I got shot at, and woke up. Anybody have any meaning to my weird dream? Also, I was only asleep for less than 3 hours. Edit. Also in my dream, I heard a voice saying, "You keep doing the same things, you never change." And the part of me walking home reminds of a night where I was walking home on acid, and I decided to change my life for the better and quit drugs. I think that night was my dark night of the soul.
From Sexyfish98. I just had a dream. I was dating Kim Pine from Scott Pilgrim, and I asked her to go to a disco with me, and she said yes, and we hung around for the day. But then I woke up, and now I realized that she was the only person who truly loved me, and she was just a dream, and I'll never see her again.
From Mionamo. In this dream, I was in an abandoned-looking house. There were about 3 to 4 dogs in there. Initially one, and then all the dogs ran into another room. I attempted to close the door and keep it closed, but they got back out, and one wolf-looking one lunged at me. I was getting a lot of deja vu about a building in a city right before this, and fell asleep. From Antique A3388. I was on a boat with my entire immediate family, on my mom's side, and I was 8 years old, meaning it was before I knew I had epilepsy, and I had a grand mal. I usually just have focal aware ones, seizure, but I was fully aware at the same time, and my family just watched me and was saying mean stuff that was hurting my feelings, but I don't remember what they were saying.
From Art Pile. Just woke up from this wicked UFO dream, where I'm standing on someone's second-story roof balcony when a silver mushroom tripoded styled flying saucer comes out of the distance and lands in the yard next to the house. I was waving at it as it landed, but then 2 tanks roll in hard from seemingly nowhere and ram the ship from its side. And as it started to take off to escape, the tanks opened fire on it, damaging it on its side. But it still remained airborne, but had visible damage when they continued to lay into it with gunfire, when from the side of the house came some new military shit that laid into the UFO with something like rockets, but fireball style shooting out of this D-shaped rig, all in rapid fire, bathing the saucer in munitions.
From the Moldy Baguette. In this dream, I get sent into this universe in the middle of the night, where everything G except the beginning of each sentence meant the opposite. In dialogue, the first sentence is the normal one, while the rest has a reversed meaning. I.e., have you heard of The Avengers? It's an unpopular movie where Robert Downey Jr. is an extra. It's a very recent movie, and it should still be in theaters. Have you heard of The Avengers? It's a popular movie where RDJ has a main role. It's been quite a while since it was in theaters. After the first few convos, I mastered the reverse talk. Also, for some reason, everyone was Canadian in this reality, where a lot of people said in the most polite tone, "I'll never forgive you for this," instead of sorry. Even the Christmas carols on the radios had reversed meanings, like "All I Want for Christmas," turning into a diss track about how Mariah wants to throw you away. I dreamed last night I was at this New Age store that was big. It had a basement floor. It sold typical New Age stuff like crystals, dream catchers, and charms. Next to the store, there was a smaller Christian store. The guy who owned it built it in response to the New Age store. When I went over there, he tried to give me a tract. I declined the tract, and he prayed over me. His store was like a mini indoor zoo. It had insects, small animals, and bats. The animals had to be removed as it was deemed an unsuitable place for animals. At the back of the store was an entrance to a fish store that had tanks of fish and invertebrates.
From Suspicious Ebb 4284. Have you ever dreamt that you were playing a game? That you were watching someone play a game? That you were actually in a game? Anything to do with games? Was the game one that exists or one that was made up by the dream? Explain what happened and what the game was like.
From Greywalken. This was my weird dream tonight. There was a video game. The story goes like this. 4 or 5 children sit on a bus and sing a song to relieve their boredom. They enter an antique shop. Unfortunately, they are bewitched by the owner. a mysterious, tall, slim man with a top hat, the trickster. The children have to live in a large castle and do all kinds of missions, for example, fighting zombies and carnivorous plants. The end of the game is as follows. The children have served the man for 1 year and now deserve their freedom, as he had promised. The man sitting in his red throne seat waves his hand towards a room without saying anything. In that room, the children find a billiard table, and a portal to the past suddenly appears in the table. The children see themselves singing on the bus, as in the beginning of the story. They know what to do. They sing. They sing their song, but with a different text. Accompanied by nostalgic instrumentals, they sing their warning, with a melody telling them about the strange man in the antique store, and the scary things that happen there. The children on the bus sing along, unaware that they are being influenced by the magical song. The children on the bus see the antique store, but think it is a strange store, so they look for another place. Thus the story ended with a bittersweet ending. The original timeline fades into oblivion, but in the new timeline the children have their own lives back without having to fight monsters for a year. The strange thing was, in my dream I woke up and I wrote it down for my psychologist. If you want to use this story, feel free, as long as you include my name, Emilia Samain.
From Wonderful Extent, that's 389. I just woke up and I had this crazy dream. In my dream, I decided to kill an entire family. They were hiding in their house, and when I found them, I beat them to death. After, I would take their body and throw it down the stairs. What does it mean?
From MS Producer Zero, I was selected to be in the Hunger Games. All of the other tributes, some of which were my close friends IRL, were all together. We were allowed to do our own thing the day before the games. My close friends who were also tributes wanted to hang out, but I knew from that point forward we could not be friends as only one of us were going to survive. So I decided to trust no one and walk around the streets alone. Then after walking for a bit, I found my crush talking to her friend. Then she saw me and signaled her friend to leave. We talked for a bit. IDK, what about? But then I broke the news to hear that I was a tribute in the Hunger Games. She was so sad. And we hugged for a very long time. When we hugged, I told her I didn't want to die. Then she said, "I'm not just going to let you die in there," and she made me follow her. We had to swim to her house in the middle of a lake, and she gave me food. At the end, I told her that I had a solid shot of winning as a tall, strong male, and I told her I would come back to her after I win the Hunger Games. All I remember from the Hunger Games itself was a massive building falling over in front of me. I don't remember anything else from the games. All round, though, a very enjoyable dream.
From Automatic Low 7125. I just woke up from a dream where me, my brother, my cousin, my friend, and her baby were all on a boat, and in the distance we saw a tsunami coming. We prepared for it by hanging on to the ship's interior and were able to survive. It went from being light outside to completely dark throughout this. We all got off the boat and I remember talking to my mom about it, but she didn't seem to think it was a big deal. I remember being upset because she didn't know what it was actually like to experience it since she wasn't there. Then we met Sam and Colby and Miley Cyrus afterwards. Then my tooth felt wiggly and I got scared it was going to fall out. This was really all over the place, but I guess I'm looking for some meaningfulness in this. From Kazuki 3840. Tell me what was your longest dream you've had, how long it was or seemed, and what you dreamed about. Hopefully you aren't hearing this message because you are asleep, but if you are still awake, I would like to thank you for joining us for tonight's Dreamtime Transmission.